Hey there, welcome to the T-365 podcast number 7. What a milestone, as it is on the brink of episode number 50. We're going to be covering episode number 42 through 49, as well as explaining a lot of what's been happening behind the scenes in this concept of T-365, which, if you're just joining us and seeing this podcast for the first time, it is a concept that has been haunting me in a variety of different ways throughout my life, actually. The concept of mortality, ever since that came to my mind, and I rushed to my mom, like, mom. And this was like when I was like maybe early teens, like 12, 13, 12 is not a teen, so 13, 14. And I ran to her with like a shocking realization, like, there's no certainty that I'm going to live. Like, yes, I'm like young, but I could die. And she, to the best of her ability, gave me comfort in religion. And since then, my questioning and quandary have begun, that spiraled me into this. And it may continue to spiral me to some direction, but I am not at ease with the urgency with which we should all be living life, and thus this became a manifestation of that, is trying to live life in a way where it's very conscious of what I'm doing on a daily basis. So with that, I wanted to cover not just episodes 42 through 49, but also give some context of how important it is to act on ideas that may not initially be profitable, ideas that may not initially be sane or logical, but there is some pulling, some sort of calling that speaks to you, that haunts you, and it may eventually make sense, because what else is there to do in life than to chase the things that are calling you in a way that speaks to you throughout your life. I think, you may change careers, you may change houses, cars, from one place to another, but if that calling, if that haunting aspect of life is still with you, it probably deserves more attention, and this is my effort, my attempt at giving it more the attention that it requires. And I'm reminded of this concept that I picked up on a flight, sitting next to a stranger and starting up a conversation. She mentioned to me that she had a great idea for a book, and that she didn't execute on that. And a few months later, she comes to find out that somebody else had written a very similar book, a similar concept, and had published it. And what she conveyed to me was that ideas will give birth to themselves. It's just a matter of through which individual. The same way that I have believed that if Thomas Edison didn't invent the light bulb, or Henry Ford didn't mass produce the car, or the Wright brothers didn't make or invent the advent of flight, that somebody else would have. And so it's a very interesting, very trippy idea that ideas themselves give rise through people, whether you decide to act on them. Like, let's say a butterfly is synonymous to an idea, lands on your head, and should you not act on them, life or whatever consciousness or whatever force or energy is trying to manifest that through you, and should you not be, then it's actually going to go to someone else. By the way, as I'm looking at this, I realize that this is different than the other poppers that we use, and it has a very good reasoning. Now, this plant, the actual black one, is at the office, but we still needed to shoot this today, and I remembered, oh wait, I got one for her that I never ended up using, and thus it is still being utilized today. So another expression of things getting its way, one way or another. And this project of T-365 is so much bigger than I realize. It's a calling and its purpose that affects every single person, every single animal, every single living thing or living being that is biological, at least that we know of. And either we ignore our mortality, which can be detrimental, and detrimental not because ignorance is bliss. Actually, there is a lot of comfort in ignorance. It's studies have shown that the smarter you are, the more saddened you are, the more depressed you are about life, because you realize the tragic and the stark truth about things, as opposed to just being gleefully giddy about the smallest things, which may sound like there's a low IQ, but in terms of being happy, it might not be a bad thing at all. And sometimes I fantasize, should I just downplay or dial my intelligent quandaries and questioning. Not saying that I'm intelligent, but my questioning always pushes me in the direction of how do I seek and find more intelligence. And it has not been encouraging that most philosophers, like Socrates, like Plato, like Aristotle, have not lived such a happy life. Although an unexamined life, according to Socrates, is not worth living. It begs the question: is an examined, unfulfilling life worth living? Because at the end of Socrates' life, if you remember anything about Socrates, he said that all I know is I know nothing. So what's the difference between an ignorant person and a person that has thought so deeply to come back to the same conclusion of, the capacity of the human brain is so limiting that if you ask a chimpanzee to try to explain to you theoretical physics, or the way that a rocket ship works, or the way that a Tesla motor works, it's like it'll probably ask you for a banana, or come and give you a hug, or whatever monkeys do. Although it would be nice to get a hug from a monkey, that'd be an interesting Instagram photo. Nevertheless, what I'm getting at is we humans are, of course, the predominant life form on this planet, and actually the only life form that we're aware of that has consciousness. That brings its own world of problems, and it brings its own world of advantages. We're able to ponder not just the past, but also ruminate about possible futures. We're able to have an imagination. We're able to actually extrapolate things that have not happened. We're able to create such dynamic social environments as to create culture and language and art and societies. And so it has brought in a lot to be in awe about, but at the same time it brings the one major quandary that I'm suffering with, which is being aware of your mortality. No other being that we're aware of is aware, like for example a dog or a cat is not aware, someday my life will end. And so being conscious of that, we have perhaps invented tools or methodologies, from religion to meditation to everything in between, to come to terms, to come to peace with that. And so this project has been really driving home that point for me. And in some days, like although we shoot in my privacy, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm actually going to die. This is not just for a concept or storytelling. And the crazy thing is that some might look at 365 days and say, oh, okay, like that's a short amount of time for someone to only have 365 days left. And I realized that there is such a lack of guarantee that I will actually live for the 365 days to complete this, that it drives home the point that if I were to die in between episode 1 and episode 365, it would be proving the point of this, although the project may be incomplete. It would drive home the point of what I was trying to get across, is that you don't have forever. You actually have not just perhaps, the thing is, if you don't think you have a short amount of time, you're going to end up wasting a tremendous amount of time. So it's better to confine and self-restrict, versus let life restrict you in that way. So beyond that, I'm coming to consciousness about again everything that I was that has been plaguing and haunting me, but this has now turned into an expression of trying to find fulfilling ways to live life and trying to put my values and priorities in the right context, as opposed to thinking that I will someday, which is a very, very vicious trap that I myself, and perhaps you, perhaps everyone, as we all have a better version of ourselves in our heads that we rarely ever achieve. And it's actually very, very few people, because I will say that I am one of the most conscious people I know. And that's not saying much. I'm sure there's much higher conscious people, but if you take a bell curve, I definitely I think fall in more of, not an extreme outlier, but in a range of not the normal type of thought process, and with that, I want to actually make sure that I do something that is fulfilling and leave something to have said that I have utilized the time that I've been given to do, whether it's a personal journey, whether it is an impactful journey, but something that was very conscious, as opposed to something very mindless and end up drifting through life and like realizing at 40, realizing at 50, realizing maybe not even at 40, 50, realizing a month from now when there's a great travesty in my life, the death of a parent, the death of a loved one, getting into an accident that paralyzes my limbs, or whatever the case is, which is not impossible, but it is something that can happen. I realize that death is a for sure guarantee, and then so here's the normal you, here's the total degradation of you in terms of your life force. And there is a spectrum of things that can happen, from you getting a cut or scraping your knee, which can be physical, to emotional damage of a breakup, of losing a loved one or a child, to a myriad of things. Like, just as life can get better and we're consciously working towards that, life can, and it will be also balanced by, hey, you got a job promotion, great. Your parent also has cancer. Like these sorts of ups and downs that we have to be very conscious of, or be prepared for, or find ways to balance, find ways to accept that reality. And so it's that endeavor that I'm trying to both figure out for myself, because I guess and in episodes 43 to 49, as 42 was a part of the previous podcast, in these episodes I talk about some of the solutions that society offers, whether it's culture or religion, and why that hasn't worked for me. So with that, I will dive into episode 43, Priceless, which is one of the most precious concepts to me. I talk about initially the priceless, or the things that do have prices, and my belief on exchange of value, that I always try to make sure that the other person, as much as I try to get a good deal, as much as I'm here in India bargaining and getting more and more advanced in my negotiation skills, I still want the shopkeeper or the vendor or the street merchant to get a good deal himself. I tell them, I want you to be profitable. I also want me to get a good deal. So in that way, that's the kind of transactions that I like to make. Now, the things that are priceless to me that I cannot negotiate on are the memorabilias and the mementos that I have that are reflections and pieces of my life, from letters to pictures to gifts. They hold so much depth that you cannot know. Like this pink puff stopper thing has a lot of emotional weight to me because of the hope and expectation that I had that was not met. I remember ordering it on Amazon with excitement, with enthusiasm, with a vision of how we would do the podcast, what kind of topics that we would talk about, and how much it would connect us. That never happened, so this is something that not all things have this, like this table has no significance to me because the place that I'm renting it from, it was just here. But this little thing has tremendous amount of significance, as well as other small pieces of my life that I like to carry around. They're reflections of the memories that I also cherish, that I also very much like to keep conscious of, very much like to replay in my head, because most of life, as I've described in other voiceovers, is digging through the dirt to find the gold. And if you can go back into your mind and relive a golden experience, considering that vast majority of digging for gold is just removing dirt, vast majority of life is just going through the day-to-day trying to handle and manage life, and here and there we get a bit of good news, get a bit of gold. Again, it can also be counteracted by negative events. So if I can replay those golden moments, why wouldn't I? People are so critical about, don't live in the past. I understand that there is a future to go after, but you're telling me that I shouldn't cherish the past that I've lived, or what has made me into who I am and the origins that I come from. It is such a rich part of my life that I'm not willing to sacrifice. And by the way, that's the reason why I do not drink. There's no religious context, there's no social context. I don't drink because I want to keep my consciousness the sharpest that I can. I want to elevate the consciousness, and not just drinking, but also experimenting with drugs. Now you could say, hey, there's a drug that will elevate your consciousness, and we might have a different conversation. But nevertheless, I don't smoke and I don't drink for that reason, which is a very dear part of my life, which is I don't want to lose any part of me, and I don't want to dull my life, and I don't want to not remember the things that are painful. In fact, I relish in the fact that I have memories that invoke such sharp, vivid memories or emotions that I feel. I feel the weight of my mistakes. I feel the weight of my losses. I feel the weights of my breakups, and it's something that I carry with me with a sense of preciousness, a sense of not. I want to not think about this. There's actually a great movie that I'd like to watch someday with Jim Carrey, The Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, or something like that. A very, very brilliant concept where Jim Carrey, the character, has a breakup with someone, the girl, and he then tries to forget her by going to some sort of, whether it's hypnotherapy or some sort of technology that allows you to do that. And he makes attempts. And again, I haven't watched it. I just watched the trailer. But it's such a beautiful concept. I don't have the heart to watch it now as vivid of a relatable story as it is. So at some point in my life, I do aim to experience that. But what I'm saying is that the past is very precious to me. It's priceless to me. 44, yacht, which is I think very contrary to much of what I was conveying about my lack of my artificial desire for materialistic things, which is only manifest in my efforts to acquire enough money to take care of my responsibilities so I can actually pursue the things that I want to pursue. So my altruistic phase of life requires financial resource. My hedonistic phase of life will be actually that doesn't cost that much money. It's the responsibility that I have towards my family, towards everyone that has invested hopes, dreams, sacrifices into me. And then, of course, transcendence, the third phase of my life, doesn't require any money as well. So, yacht is an interesting one, but it is not the yacht itself. It's the symbolism that I saw as I was studying in the med school library, and realized that there's so much more to life, or not in the sense that I want to pursue all the things that money can buy, but here's what I was saying, is that the one direction that I was given to serve a universal cause was health. Like, if you become a doctor, you will be respected and you can take care of people in the health dimension. And what I realized by looking at that yacht is there is another dimension, wealth, through which I can serve a similar universal agenda, or being able to take care of people. So health allowed me to take care of people. And I realized at that moment, looking at the yacht, so did wealth. And the wealth actually came with tremendous amount of creativity and expression. We used to have this funny, it wasn't funny really, but a inside joke in med school: what do you call creativity in medicine? And the answer is a lawsuit, because there is no creativity in medicine. And so I did not want to be a robotic human, just following procedures, following just the protocols, but rather I wanted to do what humans can do. The extent of it's like using a knife backwards to cut vegetables. Like, wait a second, if you flip it the other way, meaning the creativity, you can get so much more done. So whether you're in a space or you're headed towards an area, if you're not able to express the things that make you human, then I think it'll be like a bird in a cage, like, or even crazier than this, a bird who just decides to walk. How bizarre and how idiotic would that be? An eagle is just walking around, saying, yeah, walking gets me by, not realizing the capacity of its reach to soar into the sky. I think that is what I realized at that moment. Like, wait a second, I could still get by. I could still serve a purpose, serve the purpose of taking care of my responsibilities, my family, as a doctor, being on the ground as an eagle would be, or I can also serve that purpose by exploring the entire world, because as a doctor, you're confined to schedules, you're confined to hospitals, you're confined to judgments or not judgments, but protocols and higher management and that stuff, whereas in the pursuit of wealth, you have so much creativity and flexibility. So episode 45, or day 45, empowerment, has to do with a plaque on my desk as I was pondering whether or not I should drop out of med school. That actually the yacht made that decision for me, but the empowerment episode helped me to justify it. So when I was sitting in the library and saw that yacht, and just in a frozen state of so much running through my mind, at that moment I had checked out. I had liberated the virtual, invisible, huge burdens of my life being dictated for me. And at that time, I felt this wonderful sense of freedom and exploration of the world. Like, wow, I could be anybody. Up to that point in my life, it was you, Sal, the doctor. My son, the doctor. My brother, the doctor. My nephew, the doctor. So it was just that one character that I was confined in, one possibility that I was confined in. And yes, I have adopted that, but I never got to explore anything to say, okay, you know what, I've looked at like 100 different careers and I'm going to choose doctor. That never happened. It was handed to me. It was fed to me. So the yacht kind of unlocked that and freed me from all of that, and then empowerment when I saw the plaque on my desk, which was a quote by, I think, Ralph Waldo Emerson, that says, "Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path, and leave a trail." So that I clung onto, and I did so because I felt that I knew the rest of my life if I stayed a doctor. That was very well scripted. Everybody knew med school, residency, and then like insane work schedule. And like I've met doctors, and they weren't living the kind of life that I wanted, but more so, it was already like a canned life. Like you kind of know what you're getting there, which that was the first time that I made a leap into the unknown. I've taken the unknown path, and since then, multitude of times when it came to a decision of here's the known path and here's the unknown path, I'm like, okay, I know where this is. And it didn't have to be bad. Like one night it was going out with my friends to go bowling, and the other option was going to fulfill a wager that was made a week ago about if of a mini golf game that was played in my office, and she lost, and she was going to actually prepare dinner for me as like a retribution, and I actually kind of didn't want to go, but I remember that day very, very clearly, which was I have obligations with my friends to go bowling. I know the outcome of that. It's going to be a good experience. And then there's this path of which I don't know the outcome of. And I said, just for the simple fact that I don't know the outcome, let's see what happens there. And so I actually messaged my friends coming up with some rationale of traffic, or it was some holiday and there was a lot of cars on the road, and moved that to the next day. And then I went to that retribution / first date, which took my life into a whirlwind of adventures that I'm extremely grateful for, and has shaped me into someone that I'm more happy to be, and has created profound amounts of memories that has enriched and beautified my life. And now I follow that philosophy of, even if it's a great path, but if it's like fully known, like, you know, I'd much rather go in the adventurous path, which may not always be wise, but that's just me. Now, day 46, curiosity. This has been me coming to America and seeing the clash of cultures from what was taught inside the home to outside the home. My parents tried their best to keep us protected from the Western ways, but they have failed. And not that we have accepted the Western ways, but the Western ways also did not seem pleasing to us, and by us I mean me and my brother. And those two clashings of cultures and religions opened up our minds to the fact that, wait a second, if our parents could believe so confidently and so committedly to, which by the way I don't know if committedly is a word, to their beliefs, and so can these people, who's right and how do you tell? And those sorts of quandaries have led us to become woke, and just realize that all beliefs are subjective, but we should go find something to hold on to for this life. Day 47, Multiverse. Oh my gosh, this blew my mind in a way that was so detrimental, because it spun me into a spiral of nihilism, which is actually day 49, and my struggles with that. And it took a very long time for me to get out of nihilism, coming to realize that although there may be a multiverse and a multitude of different versions of me that have accomplished this or that, or every possible options that I could possibly choose has already been expressed. What's the meaning of me? What's the purpose of me? I finally concluded in nihilism that it may be like the cell in my body that doesn't know the grander purpose that it's serving. I may be a small, infinitesimal piece of a bigger puzzle of which I cannot see the picture of. And day 48, Genesis, was the origin of my life, as well as consciously or constantly being reminded of how my life began and how I was brought into this world lifeless, not breathing, and how thanks to the help of a local nurse who slapped my bum or somehow cleared my nostrils or cleared my airways to allow me to take the first breath of life minutes after I was born, that's the reason that I'm here, and perhaps I'm here to serve a purpose. And I realized that it might not be a divine purpose, which there's reasons why I don't believe that it's a divine purpose, but it can still be a self-fulfilling prophecy, and that's what I'm living for. So I know I covered a lot about the grander perspective of both this concept of T-minus 365, as well as dove deep into each of the topics, but I hope it's to express that there's great depth to life, and one should not overlook that just for the sake of an unknown future. There's so much in your history, in your current place in life to draw from, and that is something that I'm doing right now, and to be very much in the present, because as we like to say here at the T-minus 365 production team, that we should not waste today, as tomorrow is unpromised. With that, I will catch you on episode number 50, day 50 of this 365-day journey.